My name is Matthew Kreuter, and I'm the Director of Learning and Engagement with the Games for Change Learn team. I'm thrilled to introduce our next panel. For many young men today, gaming isn't just entertainment, but a place where they can find true belonging, identity, and connection. But that connection can sometimes be complicated. Gaming can offer a space for community, or it can reinforce harmful norms. This panel brings together experts to unpack that duality. They will share new research on how young men seek help online and explore how designers, platforms, and others can shape gaming into a force for positive connection rather than isolation. Please join me in welcoming our panelists, Maria Tamellini, Michael Robb, Jesse Mahler, and our moderator, Michael Frazier.
Okay, let's get comfortable. Thank you for having us. My name is Michael Frazier. I'll be moderating this session today, and I would like to properly introduce these three distinguished panelists. I've reached a certain age here. Let's start with Jesse Mahler. He is a program manager at Futures Without Violence, an organization that advances health, safety, and prosperity through programs, public campaigns, and policy change. Jesse's work at Futures focuses on building positive pathways for men and boys, and he is a co-author of the report Manosphere Rewired. Next to him, we have Maria Tamellini. She is an award-winning entrepreneur and a co-founder of GamerSafer, a company that works with multiplayer games, esport platforms, and online communities to deliver safe, fair, and welcoming experiences for players. Michael Robb, he's the head of research at Common Sense Media, an independent research-backed nonprofit that focuses on kids' safety and well-being in the digital era. He oversees a wide array of research initiatives focusing on how media and technology impact children and families' lives, and is the lead co-author of the report, Boys in the Digital Wild. Because there's two Michaels on stage, you'll hear me refer to him as Mike. So let's get the conversation started. I think we want to look at the state of young men in gaming and online spaces. In my day, it was about hand-eye coordination. Games do a lot of things differently now. So Jesse, I would like to start with you. Topics like the male loneliness epidemic are headline news. However, the headlines don't tell the entire story. Could you fill us in on the state of mental health among young boys and men?
Yeah, thanks everyone. It's so nice to be here. Just for a touch of more background, Futures Without Violence, we were founded 40 years ago with our roots around violence prevention and safety for women and children. And for the last 20 years, we've built campaigns, training, and programs focused on engaging boys and men in conversations and in action around healthy relationships, advancing healthy relationships. And so our programs like Coaching Boys into Men, which leverage the power of sports, it's an evidence-based program through weekly conversations, or Team Changing Minds, which is a national early mental health response network. These all get at the roots of where are the social norms that inhibit healthy relationships from forming, healthy mental health skills from forming. And so we've always sought to meet young men where they are, which is exactly why more recently we've had a lot of attention and focus within online spaces, within video games, within streaming, within the manosphere, which we'll talk a lot more about. So to your question around the male loneliness epidemic, I think that there are some things that national media gets right and something that national media gets wrong. And so you'll see on the slides here some just the founding of this conversation, where there is a crisis of connection, crisis of loneliness, which the former Surgeon General spoke to. There are young men feeling that they don't have people who know them well, a decrease in close friendships, increases in rates of depression, of hopelessness about the future. So this is the reality that many young men are sitting with. But it does pose the question of why boys and men still? Because what we actually know from research is that girls experience rates of loneliness and mental health challenges at roughly equivalent rates to boys, and in some instances worse. So why specifically? And that's where the final point that's on the slide here gets at, which is that the length of time it takes to identify a mental health challenge and then to get support is longer for boys and young men. And why is that? So we'll go to the next slide, and there's so many reasons why. We want to point to two in particular. The first has to do with the social and the cultural norms that prohibit help seeking, that prevent healthy relationships and communication skills from forming. And I'm actually going to cherry pick a couple pieces of data from Common Sense Media Report, but I won't step too much on what you're about to say, which is that 46% of boys say that they must not show fear or sadness or cry in order to avoid being picked on or teased or bullied. 38% of boys say that they must not act too feminine or too gay to avoid being picked on and bullied. We lead training and education around the country with colleges and high schools, and one listening session really sticks out to me where a 21-year-old man said to me that he had not been hugged since he was 5 years old, which maybe is more exception than it is the rule, but it paints this broader picture of what we see when we lead an exercise called the man box, where inside the box is what does it mean to act like a man, and outside the box is what does it mean to act unmanly. And we hear the same things in every community that we're in across the country, across so many differences, so many similarities. Inside the box, you have to be in control, you have to be strong, you have to be a provider, you have to have lots of sex. Outside the box, you can't be too feminine, you can't be too caring, you can't be gay. And then we ask the question of, what happens when you step outside the box? And we hear the same responses, which is you are bullied, and you are punished, and you are excluded. And that's what creates a cycle that means that there's a forcing mechanism to then participate within that culture, which I think many of us have experienced. So this is one key element. The second key element is the economics, which are on this slide. And we know from research that men under the age of 45 who experience significant economic precarity are 16 times more likely to have thoughts of suicide than their peers. A lot of that is exacerbated and caused also by other forms of discrimination and marginalization. Rates increase for women too, but the distinguishing factor is these cultural messages about being a provider. And sometimes I say to myself, like, it's 2026, are those still so strong? Research from last year shows that men and women say that the number one attribute that defines what it means to be a man is to be a provider. So this is incredibly palpable. And when you layer all of these factors onto rates of loneliness and mental health challenges, we get the picture that we have today. I just want to finish with one slide very briefly. It's kind of a setup to what Robb is going to share, which is that we conducted some research with our partners at Ecumundo in 2024 called the Manosphere Rewired, which before Clavicular and Looksmaxing were public news, and before Louis Theroux's documentary was looking at where are these cultural norms being created online and what can we do about it. We found that just shy of 50% of young men find their online lives to be more rewarding and engaging than their offline lives, which isn't maybe that concerning given all of what we're here for, is that there can be connection and belonging and play. And yet at the same time, what young men are going online for is being infused by so many harmful messages, degrading women and girls, that are reinforcing these harmful ideas about help-seeking behavior. And that is the 69% of boys in the 11 to 14 range being exposed to those harmful messages, many of which are coming from algorithms and not even what young men are seeking themselves. So we'll talk a lot more about the manosphere, but we just wanted to paint the picture of what is the state of young men's mental health.
Thank you for that, and I think I want to dive a little deeper with Mike. I know he's going to go through his report, Boys in the Digital Wild. There's a quote that's stuck in my head right now. It's like, trust God, everyone else bring data, and I think that's what you're going to give us a point to. So what should we know about the influences that are shaping young men's online experiences? Jesse talked a lot about the stigmas, talked about the social constructs. What are some other influences that are affecting these young men online? Give it to you, Mike.
So thank you very much. Thank you, Michael, and thank you, Games for Change, for hosting us. This is a great question. I'm from Common Sense Media. Some of you may know Common Sense Media mostly as a ratings platform where we do ratings of TV shows and movies, and we used to do some game reviews, but we also have a very robust research apparatus where we do a lot of research on what kids' digital media environments are like and what are the effects of media technology on children between the ages of birth through 18 across a range of different outcomes and areas. So we did this report called Boys in the Digital Wild last year in response to what we thought was kind of an underreporting of what I think, we saw a lot of reporting about the effects of social media on girls and a lot of discussion about how their girls' online experiences were affecting them, but we didn't feel like there was maybe as much attention on what was happening with boys. And obviously, in adolescence, this is a time when kids are going through identity formation. They're trying to explore questions of who they are and how do they fit into the world. And in that context, we wanted to understand, what is the role of, what they're seeing and experiencing online. How is that shaping how they see themselves and their developing masculinity? So this was a survey of over 1,000 teens between the ages of 11 to 17. It was a nationally representative study. We asked about a range of issues related to their online experiences, and I'm just going to share a couple of the findings so you can kind of see what's happening here. We asked specifically about lots of different kinds of content that they were seeing. And this kind of content were things like making money, exercise or fitness content, things about weapons or fighting, things about dating advice, a whole host of different kinds of content that were showing up in their feeds. And these were things that we bucketed into a term that we call digital masculinity content. And what we find in our survey is that 73% of the boys in our survey say that they are regularly experiencing this kind of digital masculinity content in the feeds and the content that they see. And 23% of them are experiencing what we would consider to be high levels of exposure, which means they're getting it multiple times a week, multiple times a day, and are really much more saturated with this kind of content. So it's enormous, right? They're getting a lot of this content. And if you've seen any other stats about how much time boys and girls are spending online today, you get a sense of like the scale of the amount of content that they are seeing that might be reinforcing some ideas about digital masculinity. Something interesting to note about this is that it is very much algorithmically driven. So if you ask kids, like, where did you first see this stuff? It's not because they're searching for it. Most of them are seeing it because their feeds are just kind of automatically supplying it. And it's showing up whether they want to see it or not. And then if you start to engage with it more often, then you start to see more things that are just like that. Next slide, please. So it wasn't just about the content that was coming into their streams. We were also interested in the gaming spaces that they were occupying. And one of the interesting things that came out of this study was the number of boys who cited gaming communities and gaming platforms as places where they really felt a strong sense of belonging. You can see here in our survey, 58% of the adolescents in our survey said they really identified this as a place where they felt like they belonged. Simultaneously with that, they were also saying that they were observing lots of potentially problematic behaviors online, often in the form of homophobic, racist, sexist, misogynistic kinds of language that often amounted to things like cyberbullying. And they were exposed to it. Doesn't mean they were all participating in it, but they were exposed to it. We also did see a pattern where those kids who said that they were heavier gamers did say that they were also more likely to engage in that kind of harmful conduct. Next slide, please. Another thing that we keyed in on as we were trying to understand the influence of their online communities was what is the role of content creators and influencers in their lives? I know we want to think that kids are getting role models from healthy adults in their lives, but they're also getting lots of messages online. The kids in our survey, 60% of them said that they felt that their influencers on their stream were inspiring to them. 56% said that they had tips or advice that really helped them. But overall, pointing to content creators and influencers as one of the primary sources of support for them in their lives. So this is the kind of environment in which kids are swimming, in which you see there are opportunities for seeing what they're seeing online as places of support in the case of where they in the case where they are participating in gaming communities where they feel like people are listening to them, or where they feel like they're getting messages from influencers who maybe have similar views or are saying things that really resonate with them. But they're also awash in lots of really problematic messages, potentially harmful messages, lots of messages that reinforce very stereotypical views about women. And so the challenge, I think, is to try to understand, obviously, how to reduce the harmful messaging that kids are exposed to while improving the kinds of spaces they can be in where they are receiving support. I think one last thing that I'll point to in the report is that we find that kids say that, adolescent boys say that they have a hard time receiving care, right? We ask them a battery of questions about their ability to receive kind of words of kindness or support. They don't ask for help. If they ask for help, they feel weak or it's shameful in some way. But they're very much more comfortable, they say, in giving help to others and giving care when needed. So how do we capitalize on that and also help to make kids feel more like they can receive help if they actually need it? I think that is the challenge for gaming platforms and gaming communities, given how we think they play an important role in kids' lives.
Thank you for that. Quick follow-up, and I don't know if you have the answer today, but in terms of having content creators participating in trying to make these spaces safer, do they understand that power? I know when they want to get clicks and engagement, they're very creative, they do a lot of things, but it seems like now, looking to help in a positive way, do they recognize that responsibility, that power? Do you know anything about that? And this could be open to anyone.
Do they? I hope they do. I think some probably do. I think the platforms make it so that they are monetizable by attention, right? So if what you are doing is positive and helps you get attention and helps you monetize, that will increase the likelihood that you engage in that kind of messaging. If you can say things that are outrageous and shocking and get people really amped up, that also makes a lot of money. And unfortunately, that drives a lot of attention as well.
It's interesting. So if Mike and Jesse are on the front line of this issue, but introduce someone who's probably straddling both lines. Maria, let's talk specifically about gaming. As a company that focuses on gaming health and safety, you've learned a lot about how boys and young men are showing up in gaming spaces. At GameSafer, you just completed research among your players in the Mind Hut community that can give us some insights. What dynamics are you seeing among boys?
Yeah, thanks for the question and for the opportunity to be here. It's such a special moment for us because we just launched a new report about player support that works. And this report is focused on help-seeking behaviors with gender and age lenses. And help-seeking is such an important element of this conversation that Jess just described. Just like more insight about what Mind Hut is and GamerSafer. So GamerSafer, we're a trust and safety company working with games to support them in delivering safer experiences for players. The first major game using our technology was Minecraft, and that led us to acquire Mind Hut, which is a server hosting platform where anyone with no technical expertise can create and manage their servers. So what this context is important. So think about Mind Hut as a train station, and in the main platform, you can have all these different activities, and from that center platform, you can go to all these different worlds. So under our supervision are thousands of servers, millions of players with different experiences. So we did this research in-game, so meeting players where they are, and we asked a couple of questions. So this is the full report, and I just brought a few insights as I don't have a lot of time that helps us to have this conversation. So the first thing that we realize is that boys are willing to seek help in the gaming native channels and in the game itself, and that can be a segue for them to deepen the help-seeking support that they need. So 53% of boys and young men choose in-game chat, and 28% choose server staff to go for help, and from there, they can expand that help-seeking. And the other thing that the questions we're asking, no report does not mean no harm, and also as a mother of two boys, like being silent about certain things doesn't mean there is nothing going on, and a substantial quantity of boys said they not reach at all for personal struggles, and this means, we can have an active boy in a game or at home, but they can be struggling with something without sharing and being silent about something that matters to them. On the other side, trust relationships matter a lot for some boys. So 39% of boys and young men said they would talk to someone close in real life. And I think this closes an important loop based on what Raising Good Gamers is launching here at Games for Change, like seeking the spaces where we can have those conversations with our kids, because there is the potential of getting that help. And they will also talk with a friend or someone they play with in Minehut. The other insight connected to that help seeking and that interaction with another player they play with in Minehut is that players who had a positive view of the community would seek more help in our channel. So closing the loop again, community design, the way we're shaping our communities can influence the way boys are interacting with the community and seeking help. So this is something that we should keep diving in. And I forgot to mention that I'm not a specialist in this space, but my role at GamerSafer as someone that is managing a large platforms where young boys are coming every day is to partner with organizations that have the expertise so we can evolve as an industry, supporting with features, new guidelines and things that can better support us and the players themselves. And connecting to what Matthias said, I think that is also our job as an industry to have that kind of responsibility and keeping curious. So in the next slide, I talk a little bit about AI because AI is such a big thing right now for young folks, and they're using AI for help seeking as well. Boys are mostly using AI for game-related questions, and girls are using more for interpersonal conversations. And this brings us an opportunity for us to reflect on what kind of help they're finding out there and shaping products and information that can really help them not, getting things worse. So here are some data points in the report. You'll find more. And then, again, the community design element is such an important piece of it. And just like framing that level of curiosity and why I'm sitting here with you today, a few years back, we started with the research also in Minecraft that asked and analyzed different servers on their community norms. And servers that had more clear available community norms had less harmful content being shared and being run by players. So the evolution of that, the curiosity of keeping working with that led us to be launching this research. And now we are working with organizations, for example, Thriving Games Group, to see besides community guidelines, besides have moderator chat, and also moderation training for our volunteers, what else can we do in-game to promote the behaviors that we want in that game? So not only addressing what is wrong, what can be done, but also how can we promote the prosocials, the cooperation, and empathy, compassion, and things like that in a scalable fashion.
That's great. So you may not be a specialist, but you're a powerful convener. And so, for me, I have a son, he's 7 years old. He is not online, he doesn't play any games. The only thing we have in my house is a simulation machine, and he watches me play Mario Brothers. So but you guys are helping me prepare for when it's time to have these conversations, which I think I want to talk a little bit more about your slide on community, and this will be open before we get to talk about maybe what are some of the potential solutions and things that you guys are doing specifically. Whose job is it? It can't just be the gaming industry, right? I think they should think about certain things. Just think about engagement. Is the game fun? What's the risk reward? There's a lot of things you think about psychology when you're developing a game. Why not think about mental health? So that's one part. But who else should be involved? And this is open to anyone before we get into solutions. Who else should be involved in making sure that there's safe spaces for these boys and young men, everyone to go to online, parents, educators? Who is this community? Jesse looks like he's ready to go, so I want him to start.
You said that.
Always. The answer is everybody, but I think the question is how everybody. Like everybody's role is a bit different. But one of the other research findings, it's funny because I'm not a researcher, but apparently all I'm just doing is spouting, research. But one of the biggest research findings that I find the most fascinating is that men who fall into or believe most in the man box, those rigid ideas about what it means to be a man, both have the most sense of purpose and identity, more sense of purpose and identity than their peers. Like it makes sense, I'm aligned with who I'm supposed to be or what I'm told I'm supposed to be. They also experience the most rates of mental health challenges, substance abuse challenges, car accidents, and more likely to cause different types of harm and violence. And for me, that is it's a hopeful statistic because it shows that what's right now is not working. It's not benefiting us in the same way it's not benefiting others. And where I think that the distance that we have to go and kind of who is involved is we know what works to break harmful norms and culture and stigma to take that step is we need to have permission and we need to have support. Those are part of the ingredients of courage and the courage to take action. And well, who gives permission and support? I mean, it's everybody. It's mentors, it is streamers, it is moderators, it is parents, it's teachers, it's this whole constellation of how can we give permission and then support that you have people who are going to back you up to be taking those risks to know what types of norms and culture are we trying to set. So that looks different upon all the different roles, but I think that should be one of our guiding lights.
Anybody else want to touch on this before we go to solutions? Maria, I'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, I love what Jess just said because it's a shared responsibility. And I would just add that in that perspective, you as an organization or you as a member of a society, you should look at your superpower and you should activate it in name of the cause. So for example, in my case, I'm not a mental health specialist, but I have the platform. So how can I use this platform in service of something that is really relevant and timely important for our players? So this is something that I can do. Or I am a developer, I am a product designer. What are the features that I can do that can make a difference? I am a nonprofit, I am a teacher, I am an educator. My superpower is to take that message. So I think we all have the responsibility. We can have those conversations at home. So what is your superpower and what is your network, how you're putting that network in service of something that is really important right now?
That's great.
I mean, yeah, I'm gonna save it for the next answer. Go ahead.
Okay, I'll put everybody on the spot with this one. So let's turn to solutions. We talked a lot about the obstacles, the challenges, looked at the data. Mike, I'll go with you first. What does your research tell us about possible solutions? What should gaming companies and practitioners know?
Yeah, and this is a good build off of what everyone else just said as well, and your original question about like where else are we looking, because it can't all just be on like game developers, which is obviously true. Like we know like this is multifactorial. If it was just as easy as being able to say, well, if games were better, everything would be better. It's the same, when people argue like if just social media was gone, I think mental health would be fine. I think there are no silver bullet solutions to lots of stuff. It's usually and often multifactorial. It's the environment, it's the online community, it's what's happening in person. All of those things are true. So one of the things that we know from lots of research beyond this research is that some of the best things that kids can have are real life supports, really strong real life supports that model for them, a full range of emotions and healthy behaviors. And having those really strong in-person connections is incredibly valuable for all kinds of outcomes, including lots of mental health outcomes. Well, that's not always possible, of course, in an online community. You might know some people that you play with online or interact with online, but oftentimes you don't. But I'm going to actually go back to one of the stats I mentioned before, which was how many kids are turning to influencers and content creators as trusted, inspirational sources for them. You have in these videos and these creators some parasocial relationships, right? So they're not real, but like kids can develop a sense of trust in the people that they view online. And to the extent that in the absence of, or in addition to real world models, you want to draw on these people to also be helpful, inspirational figures that are also modeling the full range of emotions and not trying to get the kids out of the man box or show them how you can be more than just what's inside the man box, as Jesse is describing. And part of that means, being able to ask for help when you need it or be vulnerable with other people. So, having those role models online and offline, I think are things that that's one avenue of solution. That, again, that is not to let the gaming industry or social media off the hook. I mean, I think a lot more can be done to reduce the amount of recommended and algorithmic-driven messaging that permeates kids' feeds that is more problematic. Obviously they get a lot of clicks and attention and likes, and it makes money for the companies, but it is clearly not in the best interests of children and adolescents. So I think more can be done to reduce some of that targeted and algorithmic-driven programming. And then the other thing I'll add about the online environments, and I hope, you were already talking a little bit about this, but like the way these spaces are designed, to design them in ways that feel more pro-social, that reward pro-social behaviors, that lift them up while reducing the toxic or problematic behaviors. Like, I think that can be done through some combination of really, really consistently enforced community guidelines. It can be done by, helping to onboard kids into these communities in a way in which they understand what the rules are, so you're not trying to fix problems later. And then I know AI is often a dirty word in a lot of contexts, but using AI in a trust and safety context to try to catch problematic language and content in real time in voice chats and text chats, can tamp down some of the more problematic behaviors that exist in online platforms.
Yeah. Thank you for that. One thing I wanted to elevate before I go to you, Maria, is that I think you said earlier, is young men, boys, but also girls. Jesse was talking about that. My daughter was Roblox fanatic. We had all these rules and things. She just became very responsible for it. So you do have to have these conversations early. So I think that's one thing everyone should know as a parent or just as a family friend or supporter. But specifically to the solutions and to GameSafer doing things, what are you doing to respond to things specifically? You say you convene a lot of people, you work with them. Tell us a little bit about that work. What are you doing specifically so we can understand it?
Mm-hmm. Yes, on the software side, we are developing solutions to increase player accountability. So we work with the platforms themselves so they can increase the level of security of the account. And whenever a player does something inappropriate, they can enforce that. So this is one of the angles. But because we started working really close with this community-driven gaming environments, we developed other solutions that are more like catered to support moderators to manage their communities and giving them more visibility of what's going on in those communities, really catered to security and safety. But in Minehut, considering that it's owned by a company that leads trust and safety, we acquired Minehut 2 years ago, so we're like pretty new in the space of running the game itself. So there are pillars of things we're looking at. So from the policy side, how are our community guidelines? Are they aligned with the language that our players will understand? Is our moderators, able to reinforce and understand what they should do as volunteers versus our in-house moderators? Also in-game, what are the things we can do to foster that cooperation, considering we have all kinds of games? Matthias was saying that we should always keep the fun. So how we keep the fun while being safe? So all those discussions. Yesterday we had a conversation about trust signals that are informing us about what players' expectations are being met and how we measure them. So we're investing a lot of time in understanding that and thinking as games as the main platforms that are investing a lot of energy to understand their players. What we are trying to do is to do more of this research that can inform us how can we keep delivering the fun while being aware of the world they live. So how can we develop new features, mini games? So we had a very cool mini game, I think 2 years ago, that was designed to prevent vaping, because vaping is such a huge thing among young young players and young generations, and we build a whole map to talk about that. So how can we use our game to make things that are meaningful and relevant to our audience? So this is something that we are always thinking, and also partnering with organizations that can complement what we do with their knowledge and growing from there.
Great. Jesse, I know you're leading a lot of digital innovations with Future Without Violence. And by the way, the name Future Without Violence, I love to hear things that I know what they exactly are. Common Sense Media, GameSafer, Future Without Violence. Tell us a little bit about your work and what you're doing.
Yeah, there's so much exciting to get into, and hope we have some follow-up conversations from this. But the first one I want to call out is our Team Changing Minds initiative is a partnership with the National Council for Mental Wellbeing, which leads mental health first aid training, and Big Brothers Big Sisters. And we have created over the last 4 years this early mental health response network that trains mentors, coaches, school counselors to identify, understand, and respond to youth mental health challenges with a focus on young men. And that training is really meant to cut that 10-year gap to receiving support after challenges have been identified that I spoke to earlier. We've translated that training, which has been taken up by many tens of thousands of individuals at this point, for the world of Discord moderators. I imagine there are some moderators in the room right now. And so I'm probably preaching to the choir by saying that oftentimes moderators are overworked and under-equipped to deal with kind of specific and tactile mental health challenges. So we've worked with a number of moderators through focus groups and an advisory council to really strengthen our training to make sure that there are specific scripts and specific tools around navigating how do I know if someone is venting or joking or actually expressing a real crisis? How do I share resources in a way that is accessible and not intimidating? How can I set boundaries and make the right types of chats and normalize check-ins? So a really kind of holistic way of identifying, understanding, and responding to mental health challenges within Discord servers. That training is live right now. If you want to take a look, if you know moderators, we'd love for you to share or to work with you on how to make it better at teamchangingminds.org. There's also a few other Discord projects that I want to call out and work with moderators, one of which is Next Gen Man has an alliance youth Discord server that has really strong moderator features, mental health features, a lot of screeners for youth coming into the server, so it's a great resource for parents looking for a safe and healthy place for their kids to go. And the other Discord project is, I believe that Jarrell might be here, right there with his hands up, but Project Moonlight is supported by a joint initiative that we have with Equimundo called the Link Up Lab, so many names. Project Moonlight is focused on giving really significant tools to moderators, bots, and also the ability to scan Discord servers for how healthy is it based on a number of characteristics. So you can really have this diagnostic tool that can be integrated to then be able to say, how can we integrate tools to strengthen connection, how people are reintegrated after they might have a community violation. And just to call out two other exciting projects that are underneath of the Link Up Lab, one of which is with Amaze, which provides age-appropriate sex and healthy relationship education videos on YouTube. They also set curriculum standards across the country, and we've worked with them to create 5 videos on topics that young men are looking for online related to the manosphere around dating and loneliness, AI-generated nudes, along with parent and educator guides and briefs on what those topics are. So those are really exciting. They're all on Amaze's website at amaze.org. And the final one that I'll call out is a little bit more experimental, and it relates to AI. Our partner at End Tech Enabled Abuse, NTAB, is doing a project on ethical AI coding for healthy masculinity. So AI coding, vibe coding, anybody can make anything. We know that the user base skews more male, and so we're thinking about and have built a scanner to scan AI-generated code based on a number of criteria to see what messages is it putting out there that can be integrated into platforms, into new AI-generated websites and apps being built, but also doing cohorts and doing youth coding clubs as well. So that's exciting. And As you can tell, we have a lot of partnerships. We love partnering. It's what we do. And we'd love to talk with you if you're interested in any of those areas.
There's a lot of great interesting things that you have underway, and it begs the question for me. I don't know if this is a frontier, but if there's been progress, where do we still need to go? And this can be opened up to the entire panel. We talk about progress, we talk about solutions, we talked about a lot of things here today. What else is needed? Don't be shy.
Well, so first of all, I'm heartened that we are starting to move past, like, is there a problem with, like, the communities online, to, like, how do we build a better community? In our research, we see, like, kids say that they're telling us, like, what they want online, like, what they are drawn to. I think the challenge for everybody is how do we make that a reality? How do we make that community where they can have a sense of belonging, but also it's a place where it's not a place where people are tearing down? Like, how do we make that much more real for more kids? I think we find that we see that the more that kids are exposed to the digital masculinity content, the more likely they are to say they are lonely, the more likely they are to say they are depressed or anxious, the more likely they are to adhere to kind of stereotypical male norms. And I think that it's not surprising to me, but it is disappointing that more still hasn't been done on the industry side, given how much everybody acknowledges that this is a problem, and yet we still somehow seem powerless to take concrete steps that might result in, the issue is that it would result in less monetization, but we're not thinking from the get-go about, like, building spaces that promote well-being. I think it's actually easier to invest money in harm reduction. Yeah. And I think this is common in lots of spaces. It's much harder to invest in places that are quality spaces online.
So about that. So I think everyone on the stage is probably realistic and pragmatic. I don't think online spaces there's always gonna be bad apples to speak, right? The idea is to have communities where there are enough people there. You create enough people there where it can level the playing field a little bit, and at least these kids are being exposed to more positive content versus negative content. Is that how you see it?
I think one of the things that I want to mention connected what he just said, creating healthy gaming community is not only the right thing to do, but also there is a huge business case behind that. So now we have a lot of data showing that players will play more in communities where they feel they're welcome, where they belong, and players will avoid certain games because of their community reputation. So this is bad for business. So this is something that I always like to share, and there is plenty of data today showing that. On the other side, I think sometimes we want a single answer for a complex problem. There is no silver bullet, I would say, to address these things, but I think the fact we keep investigating and keeping learning what is triggering certain behaviors, and from there trying to show what is not allowed, but also what we want in those communities is something that's really important, because one thing that I forgot to mention in the previous question is that peer pressure is real in games. Yeah. So a lot of times boys will come for a game because their friends recommended that game. And in that game, they will follow what other friends are doing, and this can create a cycle that can be, healthy or unhealthy, depends on what's going on in that platform. And a trust signal, for example, for Minehut, is when our community guidelines are being enforced not only by our moderators, but by our players. When our players are able to step up and say something like, this is wrong, this can happen, this means we're creating a healthy community. So paying attention to those trust signals that don't come necessarily from the traditional ways of addressing this is also something that matters. And following up on what Jess said about moderators, I forgot to mention that we also work a lot with communities and Discord communities. We will launch a program in partnership with Discord, focus on moderators' well-being and sustainability to address some of this challenge. And with Rachel, the DLC program, we created a full free content module focused on protecting players from harms. So I think serving, it's one of the things that we can do best with what we know.
Great, that's great. And in closing, I didn't know if Jesse, anyone else wanted to add anything else before we close this out?
I'll share 2 lines, which is like, we know so much of what works. I mean, and it's so encouraging to me to be at Games for Change, seeing so much research, so many, much innovation, so many programs, because we know what works. So I think the next question is then, how do you scale? How do you scale that to really continue to make the shift that you're describing? And the final note is on the content creator and the streamer side of things, our partners at Dawn Campaigns would say that it makes more sense to be building creators from the ground up than it does to be trying to kind of fit round pegs, square holes, trying to fit messages into existing platforms. Let's support new creators that are building the right types of platforms. I think that just speaks to the kind of smart paradigm shifts, because this is still, even though this digital world has been around for a while, it's evolving constantly. So I think if we can scale and invest in these things that we know are really moving in the right direction, we'll see really significant change in 5, 10 years in the ways we want to see.
It's great. Everyone, please help me thank this distinguished panel. They are incredible, they care. Games for Change, thank you for having this space for us to have these conversations. We appreciate it.